lauded to great political advantage just prior to the recent or the
and not
last
only
election.
Gordon Campbell, but I think the media has portrayed that deal, that agreement, as being a big win for the environment. A lot of stuff is protected. So basically we see the corporate-owned media and the corporate politicians saying it's a great deal, and forest ethics as well. But I think you know a fair bit about that one.
Well, I mean, the common theme that goes through all of these compromise deals, whether it's the Great Bear Rainforest, the Mountain Caribou deal, where forest ethics had confidentiality agreements, secret negotiations about that, without having told a whole slew of environmental groups that had actually got banded together and issued a declaration about the amount of old-growth forest that was required. It was a very well-researched and scientifically based declaration that really outlined what was necessary for the mountain caribou, and then suddenly forest ethics surfaces with the government announcement as having been in both meetings. They were sitting there pretending to be involved with the Kootenai environmental organizations, hammering out a deal, but meanwhile they were secretly sitting there conniving with the Gordon Campbell government behind the backs of all these other groups, and they eventually stabbed them in the back. Then there's the Boreal.
And again, that's the agreement to protect, in quotation marks, huge amounts of the northern forest. And forest ethics, again, was at the table with a lot of other big players. Now, I've gotten emails from people who seem to have taken fairly close looks at this. I can't guarantee that what they're saying is correct, but I sure know that what the media is telling us isn't correct. And what they're saying is that nothing is being protected. Huge amounts are going to be logged, but it makes it look good, and so that's the plan. You sign an agreement that makes the corporations look good. The media tells the public that everything is protected, and the only loser is the environment. If the environment is the loser, I mean, maybe this is a great deal, but the record, I mean, the record doesn't state that that's happening.
I just have no confidence in anything that forest ethics does. They're just too cozy with the various right-wing governments, and you know, just too prepared to sit there and purport to negotiate and discuss on behalf of the environmental community. Even more frightening is seeing forest ethics deeply involved in the Enbridge Gateway pipeline, and there's a leadership vacuum on that issue right now, and a number of these corporate environmental organizations such as Forest Ethics are jockeying for a leadership position in there right now.
Now, maybe before you start talking about the Enbridge, is it called the Enbridge Northern Gateway Pipeline? I saw a picture somewhere, and basically it's a pipeline that is going to run from around Edmonton.
Yeah, Bruderheim.
In a very straight line right across BC. So take a look at your maps, folks. Through, you know, I mean, you know, through what is left of, you know, and we'll come to the west coast at Kitimat, and we'll carry not oil but bitumen from the tar sands to the west coast, and then that will be taken in tankers. I think you said 200 a year. Tankers that will take this tar to China or Asia and the west coast of the United States. Again, the media is you know, not asleep. They're deliberately not telling people. I mean, this should be a front page story every day of the month, you know, as it's playing along right now. But the media is keeping it quiet. And there's forest ethics.
Yeah, well, just to reiterate the facts of the Enbridge Gateway Pipeline, and that is on their website. You can see all that.
Okay, and I think you call it Gordon Campbell.
Yeah, I call it the Gordon Campbell Pipeline because we know that Gordon Campbell's not going to be around for a fourth term. People are exhausted with Gordon Campbell. I mean, even the hardcore neocon conservative element in our society, which is a very great minority, is fed up with him. And Gordo is looking for his legacy. And I think he would prefer to have the Site C dam named after him, the Gordon Campbell Dam, sort of like the Wacky Bennett Dam kind of thing. But I think it's important that the people of BC recognize Gordon Campbell as being the chief proponent of this incredible pipeline project, and so therefore it should be called the Gordon Campbell Pipeline. And the Gordon Campbell Pipeline is slated to stretch from Bruderheim up near Edmonton, Alberta, all the way across British Columbia to the west coast at Kitimat. And it's two pipelines, actually. One of them is 36 inches in diameter, a very large pipe, and the other one's about 24 inches in diameter, and one of them would deliver drilling fluids, condensates, all the way from the Pacific coast to Alberta, to be used in the process of lubricating the pipelines to deliver the oil.
So
and the other
pipeline will be taking...
Well, the other one...
Which I heard is very toxic.
It's all sort of a trade secret. I've never seen any kind of credible analysis of what exactly condensate is. It's a
one
secret.
Is carrying condensate from the west coast to Alberta, and the bigger
That's the smaller one, and the bigger one, the 36-inch pipe, 1,170 kilometers long, would be delivering tar sands bitumen products all the way to the west coast, where it would be loaded onto more than 200 giant super tankers, 1,000-foot very large crude carriers, which would then thread their way through the narrow rock-strewn fjords of the BC Central Coast, right through one of the wildest and most magnificent archipelagos that remains on the planet.
An area almost as rich as the Gulf of Mexico used to be.
Well, I mean, that's what's inevitable, and see, the Gordon Campbell Pipeline is facing some very severe obstacles right now. The coastal First Nations have banded together and unanimously declared that it is off limits. The Haida, the Haltsik, the Haisla, the Kitasoo, all of the First Nations are united in opposing the Enbridge Gateway Pipeline. And I should mention that our little Central Coast Chamber of Commerce, of which I'm a member, after 3 meetings, and I have to sort of say that this is one of my very few due process victories, because I'm generally a skeptic of due process, but the Central Coast Chamber of Commerce has also written a declaration that says that the Central Coast Chamber of Commerce strongly condemns and opposes the Enbridge Gateway Pipeline and associated oil tanker traffic, in solidarity with the unanimous Coastal First Nations Declaration. And this is important. We don't have any power as a small Chamber of Commerce, but our declaration it contradicts the central directive of the BC Chambers of Commerce. If you look at the policies of the BC Chambers of Commerce, it says that, Chambers of Commerce shall support the offshore oil and gas development. They are supportive of that. So we're contradicting that, and that's why I felt it was important to get our little chamber, because everybody on the Central Coast, whether they're business of any sort, is opposed to the pipeline. They know that we will have a Gulf disaster there.
A lot of business is opposed to it. Some business must support it.
80% of British Columbians are opposed to it.
And now there's a fact. If 80% of British Columbians, now where does that number come? I mean, but I'm sure 80% of British Columbians are opposed to it. In a democracy, if 80% of the population is opposed to something, we have to ask ourselves, how can it be going ahead?
Well, first of all, just to answer that, in a democracy, now, Jack, you cannot say that we have a credible democracy here in BC.
That's exactly the point. So then we have to move from the thought that we're always told that we live in a democracy. We have to face the sad fact that we do not live in a democracy, and the other sad fact that we do not have a free press, which is why this whole issue is being kept so well hidden. I
use the example for people that are, believe that we actually live in a democracy here in BC, of, the 2001 election, when the Gordon Campbell government was elected with 77 out of 79 seats. They got 97% of the power in British Columbia, with about 30% of the vote. You have slightly more than 50% of the people that had enough confidence in the elections to go and to bother to vote. People don't vote because not vote because they're lazy. They don't vote because it's clearly futile. It's a waste of time to vote in our farcical excuse for democracy. And so Gordon Campbell, in all of his elections, he's a deeply unpopular premier in British Columbia, but he's able to garner 30% of the vote, and the progressive opposition is divided. You know, the NDP likes to believe that it's the natural home for environmentalists and that sort of thing, but their policies are so primitive, so environmentally illiterate, that the green-minded population of British Columbia just can't vote NDP. And the Green Party has its issues too. I mean, anyway, the progressive vote gets divided. Gordon Campbell takes advantages of that and continues to. We get these hard right-wing governments.
But even more fundamental problem. I mean, that is. I mean, you just laid it out there. That's the situation. But the problem, as you say, the Green Party has this problem. The problem is that it shouldn't be what these politicians want. We're not hiring them to run the show. We're not hiring them as governments to tell us what to do. We're paying them to manage the economy and the society, and especially the society, the way we want it managed. And then they get elected, and we find out, you know, everybody knows this by now, that they're not working for us from the beginning. The political process has been taken over by big business. And when we get right down to everything, that's the fundamental problem in this country.
But I just want to speak to that, Jack, because I mess around with the due process. I don't take due process as the end-all, be-all. I'll exploit due process, like in situations like this Central Coast Chamber of Commerce, for example, where you can go in and play that game and sort of throw the system against itself like that, you know, for the Chamber of Commerce to issue a statement like that. However, and the corporate media, you know, we do our nonviolent civil disobedience actions, like for forest defense and that sort of thing. You have to sort of play the corporate media. You make your tree sits very spectacular. You do stunts like, I'm facing a charge in the court right now for climbing the flagpole on the front lawn of the BC legislature and hanging a large banner about the Gordon Campbell pipeline. The corporate media didn't pick that up, you know. I mean, we put out a press release and that sort of thing. It did get some coverage, but the mileage that it gets is in the progressive internet world, and you know, even in the corporate media, there's a lot of bewailing and hand-wringing right now because it's all collapsing, CanWest going bankrupt and all that sort of thing. I mean, it's a wonderful thing to see CanWest groveling and struggling like that, because they're just such just an embarrassment to our society.
The only problem is what's coming with Shaw taking over. Mm-hmm. And Shaw's taking over the TV end of it, and I'm not sure the creditors are taking over the newspaper end of it. I mean, well.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is that, you know, for issues like the Gordon Campbell pipeline, when you see fake environmental organizations like Forest Ethics, for example, Forest Ethics, and I just have to remind the viewers that the CEO of Forest Ethics, or perhaps she would prefer to be called the executive director or something, this is Sephora Berman, who, you know, I take a lot of my inspiration that the progressive world is actually a majority, where people are it's not the democratically elected elections which demonstrate a majority opinion. The progressive world is a majority that hasn't quite realized, and the due process system by which we organize ourselves politically and you know, have social order and that sort of thing is not serving this progressive majority. There's no existing social structure by which we organize ourselves that's functioning properly for the progressive community to apply the drastic change that's necessary in our society. So the progressive, I believe we've just reached a kind of a critical mass with the progressive community in the world, which we have a really good example at Copenhagen. Copenhagen exceeded my expectations of patheticness. I mean, it was so beyond belief to see, you know, the hideous Stephen Harper, the fat slob Stephen Harper waddling